Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to this webinar from PMI North India chapter. We have a very interesting topic today, which is critical conditions to watch in a cloud migration project. And we have an equally interesting speaker. Our speaker is Ramandeep Singh. He has 20 plus years of IT experience. His focus has been large enterprise application design and development. He leads the cloud engineering globally for Capgemini Financial Services. He focuses on developing the enterprise cloud migration strategy for financial institutes and banks and helps them develop right cloud foundations, migration strategy, security posture, and cloud operating model. He has worked with 40 plus banks and insurance firms in their cloud adoption journey and participated in developing cloud business cases from 20 million to up to 500 million. And he will today talk about what are some of the critical conditions to watch in a cloud migration project. So a very warm welcome, Ramandeep, and over to you.
All right, thank you, Nilima. I believe I'm audible, no issues, right?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, thank you. Thank you, and warm welcome to everybody. As Nilima introduced, my name is Ramandeep, focus on cloud engineering in Capgemini, specifically on the financial services. And I would like to share some of my thoughts, experiences, battle scars out of multiple large cloud engagements which we have executed over last, I would say, 6 to 7 years. And as you know, most of the execution starts with migrating to cloud. So a lot of learning on how we should think of running a migration project and what we should focus on while we are running a migration project. But then most of these concepts are equally applicable if you are living on the cloud and building on the cloud directly. So I hope I would be able to share that experience. Of course, the experience would be, I would say, influenced with my specific experience around financial services, but it would be equally applicable for other industry as well. Financial services, as you know, is more regulated and is more conservative from data security point of view. So some of things, for example, might not be applicable from in travel or hospitality or entertainment industry, but most of the other things would be. And other thing is that what I'm talking is from SI perspective, so the software integration perspective. So it's not about product development, but us likes of Capgemini, Accenture, Wipro, Infosys, and all who deal with executing cloud engagements and projects in any kind of contractual model for our customers. I would say you will definitely gain something. But I would also like to invite you to share any of your experience. If there is a Q&A towards the end, if you have any questions or any other thoughts or any other experience, please do share, and we would like to share that with the rest of the team members, rest of the participants as well. Okay, so what are we going to look into today? A very simple agenda is what are the cloud programs and how they are different. And I believe most of us are project managers, program managers in some shape or form. So that's my assumption. But from there, we have done a lot of software programs for our organizations, for our clients. But how are cloud programs different, and why we are talking about it today, and what are the things which are unique to a cloud program, specifically a migration program? And then, of course, the standard triangle which we talk about, triple constraints, iron triangle or golden triangle, whatever you call it. But then what are the parameters which are unique from cloud perspective for those programs? And then, yes, the scope, cost, times, which we all worry about day and night, and those items, and what I have found, which has helped me to look into specifically from these three angles. And then while we are managing all this, what are the risks we should watch out for? And we'll end with the Q&A session. But in between also feel free to type your queries. We would be able to pause and can provide inputs in between wherever possible. So we'll start with a very simple question on how, for example, cloud programs are different. And here I would like to request you to share some of your experience on what you have found unique about a cloud program or how you have dealt with it. So I'll share a simple Mentimeter thing. If you're aware of Mentimeter on your mobile or on your laptop, desktop, wherever you are, please type menti.com. You will be asked to enter a code number. Please enter 10858601, and then you guys can type whatever you feel. And if you are already working on some of the cloud programs, if you have seen something unique, please share it. Will help us setting the stage, and probably I might be able to tweak some of the items which I would like to share from my end based on your experience. So we'll give a minute to everybody.
Yeah, so I have put menti.com in the chat box. Raman, can you repeat the number, the code 108?
It's on the screen. It's not visible.
It is.
10858601.
Okay. So yeah, do please go to the Mentimeter and respond to the query. Raman, will you be able to see the answers here or on the Menti?
Yeah, it will directly come here if anybody is typing.
So we look forward to your responses.
No response so far.
No responses. 24 participants, no responses. Come on.
Okay. Mindset related to data privacy. Very, very good point. And specifically from financial services, this is the biggest nightmare which we deal with. They are new to everybody to some extent, yes. Most of our clients are living on the cloud for some time, but it's still new. It's definitely something which people don't understand to full degree. Okay, in the interest of time, let's move on. Terms of implementation and approach. Okay, good point. So let me continue and share what I have felt different about cloud programs. So one of the biggest thing you will see if you start working on either a cloud migration program or even a new development on the cloud, you will see it's transformational. And as somebody mentioned, they are new. People don't know too much about it, and that's true. While most of the CIOs and CTOs are now have cloud journey and cloud as a priority in their books, and also what I have seen before pandemic, specifically 2019, people were thinking about cloud, but then they were suddenly forced to kind of implement cloud. And now many of our customers who I know were kind of not even planning for cloud have what they call as a cloud first technology or cloud first policy, where they have to first decide why something should not be on the cloud versus the other way around. So it's a transformational change across the IT lines, your businesses, your operational organizations. And when we are doing this kind of cross-cutting transformation, you will see that your team, which you need, would be multi-skilled. And yes, most of the software teams are required to be multi-stack, or full stack or multi-skilled. But here, additional dimension of infrastructure and additional dimension of management of cost comes into picture, which everybody now has to manage, not just the people who are operating or managing it. And you will see that the line between the hardware and the software start blurring. So everything is software, infrastructure as code, policy as code, security as code, configuration as code. So everything has become software, which is good, but also then brings unique challenges to us from service integration industry perspective, software integration industry perspective, who are dealing with these programs. Because now, in addition to our development related focus, we have to bring in other capabilities and also focus on some of the other things. These programs, usually you will find, while it's quite possible to have a very niche focused program, but it's also, you will notice that these programs are organizational wide and they are cross cutting. Then you have programs which are high pace and high risk, because these are transformational programs. There's a lot of risks which is involved, and then we'll look into some of the things which I have seen in the industry. Then the unique nature of pay-as-you-go, scalability on demand introduce a lot of challenges. And generally, as a program manager and project managers, we like to have regulations. We would like to have some control. We would like to have some boundary, and then we play very well. Over the years, we have learned, define your scope, guard your scope, have a change management process, right? And that's what we have learned over the last many years. But with cloud, those lines are blurring, they're changing, things move very fast, things are scalable. So our guardrails and I would say the fort around scope start breaking pretty soon, and we have to deal with it. And that's the new reality which we have to work with. So those are some of the unique items you will find with your when you are working on cloud programs. Now moving on. So the triangle, right? We all deal with the time, cost, and scope, and we try to manage it. And what I would like to now cover is very specifically focused on these three items, and what I have picked up over the years, which has helped me in managing these projects, controlling these projects, both from technological, architectural point of view, as well as our delivery and engagement point of view, and how we have learned these lessons and you are utilizing these lessons in some of our programs. So scope. So when we talk about scope, what do we need to deal with, right? When you are migrating set of applications to the cloud, right? It's not a traditional software development cycle where there is some level of estimations happens, and then you have some historical data based on which the estimations, you are able to validate that estimate and move forward. These are new programs. Sometimes you might be doing it first time in the organization or specifically in the client organization. And over the year, we have matured, all organizations have matured their t-shirt based sizing models. So you deal with, okay, how do you size these based on small, medium, and large? Usually when you will start migrating it for a bank, for example, you will be dealing with hundreds and even thousands. So for example, one of the bank in Singapore region who we actually helped migrating, we migrated 1,500 plus applications. There is a large program in Australia which we are starting, which is 3,500 plus applications. But then yes, there are smaller ones also. One of the Canadian insurance company who we are dealing with has 170, 180 applications which are to be migrated. But important thing is, okay, how do we define that sizing? But more than that, how do we baseline that size and then have some kind of validation as we move forward around that size? And that's one of the important things which we have learned, that okay, at the beginning, yes, we would do the t-shirt sizing for estimation of how much time we will take to migrate an application or set up an application onto the cloud. but over the time we learn many things. This could be related to process, this could be related to some of the other things which are very unique to client environments, and how do we deal with it, and how do we adjust our estimation as per that becomes very important. Then we do treatment, right? So and again, this is not a technical topic, so I won't get into different categories of treatment and how those various treatments are applied. But what is important is that whatever 6-hour, 7-hour, or 8-hour treatments you are trying to actually deliver an application migration for, you would like to focus on that, and then wherever, based on your discussion with application owners or business owners, if the treatment category changes, that is actually going to impact your cost, efforts, timelines, and everything. So how do you manage that? And what you will notice, and what I specifically have noticed, is that these cloud contracts and migration contracts specifically are written at CXO level, but then the actual execution happens at the business and sub-business unit level, which were not involved in the contractual process. So many times they will not be aware of the timeline, the constraints, the other issues which we have to deal with, and they will have their own agenda, which for right reason. And one of the things which we call is as a purist drift, and for a large multinational bank who's operate all the way from Hong Kong to India to UK to US. This is the biggest issue which we dealt with when we were doing the migration, that the application owner thought, okay, now my applications are getting migrated, so let me try to clean up my house and get everything done under the hoods of this particular operation. So technical debt, OS upgrade, library upgrades, bug fixing, they would like to get everything done. And then the program set of applications which were planned to be migrated in 3 months took us more than 15 months. While it was not a cost issue, but it was a lot of reputational damage which we end up taking, because CXO level don't know the ground reality. They feel that we are taking 4 times more time than what was supposed to be taken. And that's a challenge which you want to handle. So the biggest issue which I would say is when you're treating your application for migration is the purest drift, and how do we handle that? Then another thing which you might have to deal with is your what we call as bug transfer. So you are doing only application migration. You are putting applications from wherever they are, and now you're putting them onto the cloud. You ideally would not like to touch any functional area of the applications while doing this. So the functionality more or less has to stay same. So the code and the logic will not change, which means whatever bugs were there existing will also then be transferred to the cloud, and that's okay, because that's your scope is not to fix the issues, but how do we know what is the new bug and what bug is transferred? And for that, it becomes very important to take a baseline and move with that baseline, and have an agreement with businesses and the application owners about that baseline, so that you are not blamed for any bug which is appearing now after the migration. And it is very clear what was introduced by migration and what was existing and is only being transferred by migration. And another thing is performance. While we think cloud is high performance, you get speed, you get performance advantage, but it's also important to see that some of these benefits only comes once most of the application and the data gravity also is on the cloud. During the migration process, in fact, the performance can degrade because some components are on the cloud, some are on-prem. There is a big latency, network latency between the two, and that can degrade performance. So provision for it, make your stakeholders aware that there would be a downtime, there would be a slight delay in between. Eventually things will improve, but let's be prepared about some performance degradation in between. Dependencies, when you are doing migration, you have tons of dependencies, and I would say if this is one piece which you can manage well, your battle is won. You are migrating, you are actually interfering with their day-to-day business, right? They were happy developing feature for their business owners, and everything was going as planned, and now you're coming and migrating their application to cloud, so you're interfering. There will be a lot of dependencies between the teams, existing SMEs, testing teams, for example, approval process, both from even architectural approval or security approvals. There could be dependency on your hyperscalers or cloud service providers, as we say, and those dependencies has to be watched out for and have to be taken care of. Then when you will be doing these migration, there would be a lot of integrations which you will end up doing, cross applications. Now those integration most of the time will already exist, but because now you're moving one application to the cloud, a lot of these integration endpoints will change. Your routing has to be established. You might have to create new runbooks. You might have to create new traceabilities. While when we are doing t-shirt sizing, we focus on one application, but this is the element which then brings in on how your applications are interrelated and how they will impact each other during the process of migration. Performance, we already talked about that. Let's be very clear. Yes, we are planning to improve performance, but the result might not be immediate. There would be delayed results which will be coming in. But beyond just raw performance on how much time it takes to load a page or how much time it takes to do a particular transaction, there are other things related to, let's say, disaster recovery, business continuity planning, data consistency. Now with cloud, you can have your application deployed across the globe in minutes. But then data does not instantaneously replicate across the globe. It takes time. There would be eventual consistency, but there would also be time when items will not be consistent. How do you deal with that? That becomes a very important item to take care when you are thinking of migration. Ideally, it has to be planned for and budgeted in your scope. And then the most important point, security. Of course, it's very important for everybody, but for financial services, it becomes even more important. We are dealing with money. I would say beyond healthcare industry, this is the most regulated, most protective about the data and the systems. And you have to deal with it. You have to make sure that you have required regulatory approvals. You might have to think about having any kind of internal, external audits which might be needed. Like, for example, if you're doing it in Australia, right, there is a board called APRA, and you have to provision for approval from APRA for before you're ready to go live on your cloud system. Similarly, there are these in Asia Pacific, there are these regulations. You might have noticed recently in India, new regulations have been introduced. Actually, they were there for last probably couple of months now, but nobody thought of implementing it for whatsoever reason, and suddenly Mastercard is impacted, Barclays is impacted, Amex is impacted. So there's a big impact because of the regulations coming in related to data ownership and data sovereignty. So those challenges brings into it. Normally, when we are doing software development, probably you will think about your features. You will think about how do I develop those features, how do I test those features, and then you hand it over. Somebody else is dealing with most of the other things. But with cloud, all these things actually now starts to come under purview of a software program manager or a software project manager. So before I move on, Nilima or Rakesh, any questions we see, or we can continue?
There is
There
one.
is one question.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is one question from Anil. Will the cloud really economical for small clients? This is from Anil.
Is cloud economical? Depend upon what your workload is. Based on my experience, I would say 99 times out of 100, it would be more economical, depending upon what you are trying to do. So for example, if you are trying to put your simple website onto the cloud and you have like handful of users, then may not be. But if you're trying to, let's say, build a business where anytime you can have any number of users coming in and you don't want to deal with management of system. And I'll share one example actually from a very simple use case, right? Let's say you have a bakery in a chain of bakery, right? 4 or 5, not it's your small business, a bakery business in India in some city, and with 4 or 5 franchisees, right? Not a very big business. Now you need some sort of systems to manage, and I have gone through this use case with one of our friends outside of my professional work, where if you have to set up, now you have to buy your own server, you have to worry about air conditioning of that server, electric protection of your server, backup of your server. And one of the biggest thing I noticed was that server was kept in the bakery, so no protection from fire or any other things were taken care of, right? And if something like that happens, if something happens to that server, your lots of orders will be lost, lots of data will be lost about your customers, and your business will be impacted. And if you want to deal with it, first there is this capital expense of spending couple of lakhs to set up all that thing and then continuously managing it. And think about doing this in cloud. It will become very simple. Somebody else is taking care of all these issues. So security of the cloud, protection of the cloud is taken care. You only have to deal with your actual business. And that makes life very easy and economical as well. Because if you look into, for example, AWS, right? We know AWS has 20 plus data centers, large data regions, right? Which we call it. Of course, data centers are more. But 20 plus regions across the globe. You know how many security people are there at any time on call around the globe? The number is 3, right? Think about managing this kind of business with 3 people across the globe. It's impossible. But because of the might of AWS, they are able to bring automation, they are able to bring efficiencies, and they are able to then pass it on to the customers. So that's the benefit you get with with cloud. Okay, moving on. So cost, the next vertex of, or the side, however you deal with it, is cost, right? And when we are doing cloud migration, you have to worry about some of the things which can escalate your cost and can have a direct impact on your profitability, on how you are managing your resources, your effort in some cases. The biggest thing I have seen is procedural delays, internal and external. So in any customer you will work with, so let's say you're working with Barclays or HSBCs of the world, they will have tons of process where before something goes live, it has to go through certain level of approvals. With one large customer, number of these approvals were 21 in worst case. And that was a big surprise for us because we had not planned for it. We thought there would be one approval needed when we planned some SLA around that approval, and that was it. But we never thought of having 21 approvals which we might have to chase for. So those procedural delays can actually just simply eat up your time. You would not have planned for it, and how do you deal with it becomes very important. So when you are starting such migration, while you are focused on technology, people, efficiency, and other things, there are these external delays which you don't even control. So you have to bake all that into your estimates and efforts and timelines. Similarly, there are you will notice that there would be some regulatory. So in India, for example, in some cases, you might, especially from a financial industry point of view, you might have to take some inputs from RBI in some cases. APRA, I already shared. Similarly, in Singapore, APAC region, they have a regulatory body. I mean, Middle East, similar bodies there. If you are in UK, there is CMA, which you have to deal with that. In Europe, we have EBA. Fortunately, in United States, It's less regulation, but then there are consortium of banks which might introduce some regulations around it. So how do we deal with it? Has to be baked in. All right, you will have to carve out some time and some efforts for getting these approvals, or at least facilitating these approvals if your customer is taking care of. And then another kind of delay I have noticed is where you are done, you are all ready, you are ready to fly, but business now has its own plan. They have some event coming in, so they don't want you to do anything on production. So there is this production freeze or deployment freeze type of words which you would have heard can come into picture. So you're all ready, but you cannot cut over. And now that is your problem. Your milestone is when an application will be on cloud, you will be paid for it. But now your application is ready, but it is not able to go to cloud, so you're not getting paid for. So that becomes a big challenge. We faced these kind of issues, and all of these issues are the real issue which we faced, and then we started building around this both in our contracts as well as in our project management plans. Development cost. This is a big news, specifically if you are software program manager, project managers. You will never have dealt with this cost. And why I say this is, usually, let's say you work in Infosys or even Capgemini or anywhere else of a similar organization, TCS, Wipro. What we do is, yes, we get certain requirement from our customer. Our developers already have a desktop or a laptop, or customer provides some sort of hardware for them, and then we develop over there. And then there is this environment which comes where we work with. But with cloud, you are actually developing on the cloud in most of the cases. Of course, some applications you will still be able to develop on your laptop or desktop, but eventually in the development time also there would be cloud run cost coming into picture. So that is a big new for all software engineers in our industry, that this is this new variable cost which we have to deal with. And other thing which happens is mistakes. So in my organization, at least 3 instances which I know where developer did something, and in one instance we had $10,000 burned in one day. We had another instance where across 3 days $50,000 were burnt on AWS, and then there is another third one which was even larger. And very simple mistakes. One person checked in their secret keys into GitHub public. There was another mistake where they were trying to write a Python script to create some instances, and they end up overshooting the loop, as you can imagine. Instead of from 1 to 10, if you write 1 to 100, you can create 100 instances very easily, and then they will start eating up your cost. So those developer mistakes, while they are bugs in our regular life, and yes, they will cost us production delay, but here they will immediately have a cost burn because of that if there is a developer who has made a mistake. So you have to think about it. How do you put a guardrail around it first? How do you provision? And sometimes you are able to negotiate. So all these 3 instances, actually, we were able to negotiate with our hyperscalers, cloud service providers, to actually waive off that cost for us. We have seen people by mistake share their password. It goes into dark web. People start using your AWS account or Azure account for Bitcoin mining. You have to be careful about that. And developers, especially junior developer, might not be aware of this. They are doing their experiment. They will not know what the consequences it can have. Then when you're dealing with cost, specifically if you're actually doing production cost, then how you are categorizing. Earlier, you would have seen you have a separate capital expense of your data center which comes into picture, and then that is managed separately. But now, because it's cloud, people are going into a model where they say you develop, you run, you operate, right? And all cost is, you can actually have a cost per application per department. So how is that categorized, and how do you cross charge that particular cost, specifically if you own the environment and if you're managing that environment? And then because of this dynamism nature, how the cost is managed, right? How do you manage your changes of these costs, right? You cannot have anybody just actually do dynamic scale up, and then not worry about anything else. Then when you are living in production, similar things, auto scaling, how do you handle space growth? How do you handle any kind of delayed benefits, right? And that's actually takes me to double bubble. And that's an important thing which we call about, that when we are doing cloud migration projects, there is one important thing which we have to deal with, it double bubble, that there would be a time. Imagine, let's say you are renting a house and then you bought a new house. There would be a time where your EMI of the new house will start, because either you're doing a furnishing work or something else, and your old house, you're still paying the rent. So that's the double cost you have to deal with it. And that's exactly what this double bubble is, that there would be a time where you are paying for your on-prem data center as well as you're paying for your cloud. And this cost could be very significant. Fortunately, with many of the cloud service providers, they have some schemes, techniques, offerings, discounts where they can actually cut most of this cost. So it's important to kind of try to leverage that and pass on those benefits to your customers as well. Moving on quickly in the interest of time, the last constraint which you might want to look for is, of course, time. Now, of a project delay and my, let's say, application is delayed by a couple of weeks or month in some cases, of course, will have an impact on my cost of keeping those developers and the testing team and other people on board. So there would be an effort cost, right? I'm not talking about that. So that is given for any project. But here you will also find some unique cost impacts coming out of your time. So if you shoot your time, in most of the cases when we are doing this migration, either customer is already late and they woke up a little late and now they want to do it quickly. And there would be something like, okay, my data center lease is expiring in 8 months, right? So if you don't do it by 8 months and you have to renewal is another 1 year or 2 years, right? So either you get everything done in 7 months and move out, or then otherwise you have to renew your lease. And that becomes a big challenge, because even 1 day delay is not acceptable in those cases. So how do you deal with a situation like that becomes very, very challenging, because it has a significant cost associated with it. Of course, there are certain techniques now on the technical side on how you can do some lift and shift and actually take care of these kind of challenging timelines. Not going into technology, but from a project management point of view, you have to watch out for these things. Even if a customer is owning the data center and they don't have a lease issue, they still will definitely have a refresh issue. Any hardware, any servers, networking components, other things which are there in the data center have a refresh cycle. Usually you will find for most of the hardware, we have a 3-year refresh cycle. For non-production environment, you might have, let's say, 5-year refresh cycle. And by what that I mean is, a server has a life. After 5 years or 3 years, a new one has to be bought in and the old one is decommissioned, sold, or whatever. So you have to deal with these timelines. So usually customer will say my next, and then that's what actually we ask now, that when is your next refresh or a big refresh coming in, because we have to backtrace from it and think about how we can take the customer to cloud and avoid that big refresh, because otherwise it's a big waste of money. And this money is in tens and hundreds of $1 million, usually for any medium to large institute. Other thing is market impact. Which is very unique again. Being digital, being cloud has a market impact, right? I dealt with a bank which says we are releasing a new IPO in 10 months. Before that, we want to pass it on a message to market that we are on cloud, right? A unique proposition which I could never think that I have to deal with in a software development project. Large bank recently got acquired in Australia, who we were dealing with for about a year. They are looking for a buyer. They said our cost, our basically ability to sell and the cost will increase in the market. Our rate in the market will increase if we are onto the cloud. So it was very important for them to start their cloud journey and get that stock price pumped up. Similarly, reputational things, that we are digital, we are modern, we have modern technology also become important from customer adoption, from market sentiment and your stock price perspective. So how do we take care of it? How is that important? And how your project has to take some of those items becomes very important. We'll break out for a question in another 2 minutes, quickly covering some of the risks, which when you are dealing with now, all these actually brings you to risks. But what questions you should ask yourself? First important question, which at least I ask, is getting very clear about ownership. Who owns the cloud environment? Who owns the security? Who owns any kind of delays? Who owns decommissioning? Sometimes you do data center buyouts and data center sellouts. Who owns all that, right? So all this is beyond my software development. I'm just not just doing my application and talking about requirement with business and getting UAT approvals. No, this is all business now. So I have to think about my project as a small enterprise, which has a big P&L attached to it, and I have to deal with it. What kind of degree of transformation? So the more ownership I have, sorry, just on that point, bigger risks I have to deal with, and that actually has to then baked it into the cost which I'm dealing with. Probably in some cases you might have to pass some of those risks to third parties or to your hyperscalers or cloud service providers. Degree of transformation, right? What you are changing is, are you doing a lift and shift, or you're actually doing a large transformation of certain applications? Is it whole core banking going to cloud and you're also doing a platform upgrade, or you are just simply moving your data to cloud, right? All that degree of transformation can actually increase your risk significantly. And that you might have to take care of. Similarly, what kind of architecture? Is it single cloud, multi-cloud? Are they doing more cloud native, or they are staying legacy? The more newer, scalable, multi-cloud it is, it brings in you more risk and more issues. And then how mature whole ecosystem around is, how mature you and your organization from a software service industry perspective is, and then how your customer is, right? Are they new to the cloud, or they are already living and mature onto the cloud? Are they starting their cloud journey, or they have faced an issue with another SI and then they are coming to you? So all these dynamics actually help you assessing the risk. How, for example, automation level is there from DevOps, from CI/CD perspective. What kind of approvals, how regulated the industry is, how mature the industry is from cloud adoption perspective becomes an important element, and that has to be looked into on how you take care of your risks. We'll break for questions, Nilima and Rakesh, as you suggested, for last 15 minutes. So I think this is a logical conclusion. Any questions you see on the chat which we can discuss and then go forward?
Yeah, we do have a few questions. This one is from Vijay Shri Vinod. What are the 7 R's for cloud?
Okay, so 7R, again, to not to go too technical, but it's slightly a technical topic. So what we call is, when you are taking your application onto the cloud, we call it as treatment categories, and all of these categories starts with R, so that's why it's called 6R. It started with Gartner producing something called a 6R model in 2016, and then matured into it. And every organization has a version of it. Now, what those are, like, for example, you're moving your furniture from, you're moving your house, you're moving from Delhi to Bangalore, for example. There is some furniture which you can simply throw, right? And that is called as retire. So you're retiring some of your application and you don't deal with it anymore. Then you have something which you retain. So you will simply retain those things, right? What we call as another third R is your repurchase, right? So yes, you want this sofa, but you will buy a new one over there, and you can simply, you need that application, that functionality is important. But today, for example, you have your own deployment of certain, for example, a CRM system, but in the new world, you will go with Salesforce and you will take a SaaS application of Salesforce. So that's your your repurchase category. Then you have rehost, where you are lift and shifting. You have your refactor, where you're doing certain modification. You have replatforming, where, for example, your data from regular server is going to a DB PaaS service. Like, for example, AWS has RDS, Google has Firebase, similar services, where it is all managed by them, but data is yours. And then the last one is where we call as rewrite or re-architecture, where everything is, or at least most of the things, are actually developed cloud native, and you are utilizing most of the technologies which are provided by cloud. So more detail, if you search for it, you will find it. Otherwise, please email me. We have a nice detailed presentation around it, which we discuss. I might be able to share a piece of it with you. But yeah, these are the treatment categories on how you are taking your application to the cloud and what kind of transformation you are doing onto the cloud. So that is your 6 hours, 7 hours, or 8 hours.
Great. Thank you. We have another question from Gaurav Sharma. We can set up cloud environment, that I'm able to understand, but once cloud environment has been set up, what is the process to migrate applications to cloud? Is there any tool? How does it happen?
So yes, and the tool will depend upon your migration category. So for example, let's say you are migrating your application in a lift and shift. And lift and shift means you have your application currently in on-prem, and you are simply moving the exact same application as is to cloud, no changes happening, right? So that either we deal with virtual machine level migration, or what we call as a binary migration, where you are taking your bits and pieces, and it's like file copy, but for application. So there are tools, for example, AWS has Cloud Endure. Google has something in Anthos suite. You have third party. For example, one of the big one, which I'm quite impressed with, is actually is a startup in India based out of Pune, which has developed what they call as Cloud Hedge. I would recommend you guys search for it. A beautiful product somebody in India has developed, which we started utilizing. So there are tools, but migration is actually beyond tool. So only for certain type of treatment categories you would be able to use tool, but for other categories, so for example, where either you are doing replatforming or you are doing refactoring at some places where you would like to utilize some of the cloud services, the power of the cloud, so over there you will have to have certain other interventions. So definitely you would need architects and developers, automation people who would be able to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Ramandeep. Hey, Ramandeep, so, while I take my next question from the chat, I would request you if you can bring up PDU slides so people can capture the PDU information while we are taking questions.
All right, I'm on the PDU slide, yes.
Thank you. So, and another question we have from Gaurav Sharma again. Can I have a sample project plan for cloud migration so that we have fair idea of WBS and schedule and plan in details, if at all it is possible?
Sample program, I can see if there is something in the public domain I can share. Of course, as you know, I work for Capgemini, so there are certain items where I am at liberty to share, certain I'm not. But I think, yes, an outlining structure, a good point. Probably I'll think of publishing it as a blog or something onto LinkedIn. So let me take a note of it and see what level I'm able to share.
Oh, that will be awesome. We'll look forward to it. Next question. There is not the name is not showing, like it's when Eve, when we have Microsoft Office having being hacked, how safe are we using cloud? Sanu Sood. Okay. So
Yeah, so cloud, in terms of safety, if you ask me, and one of the things which I look after is the security elements of from an application side of it. So be it a perimeter security or your trust within the applications, it is definitely more secure than what you are actually used to. And the example which I gave, for example, even if you're a small business, your physical security of your something, a server sitting on your shop is taken care of, access security is taken care of. But then it also is a shared responsibility. So something which you will automatically get from Azure, Google, or GCP or IBM Cloud or Alibaba Cloud. But then there are certain things which you have to be careful in. So security is not, it's strong, but it is not automatic. There has to be provisions. It has to be built. It has to be designed. But yes, there are no security issues. Most of the banks, the healthcare industry, travel industry, more or less has already migrated to cloud. So you can actually take it from that on how it is being utilized. So security, yes, but it's a shared responsibility. You have to work to achieve a certain secure state.
thank you, Mr. Kane. And this one is from Vikritani. Vikritani, I'm not able to say her name properly. Probably it's so what should be the thinking for very small businesses like architectural firms on going on cloud?
Will depend upon what you're trying to achieve with for a small firm. So is it you're hosting, for example, their website, or you are hosting certain other applications? But my simple, I would say, without knowing the context, my guidance would be look for software as a service from cloud. So many things are available in pay as you go model, where you will only pay for what you use, you will pay for what you utilize, and you will not pay single dime if you don't use it. So for small businesses, that's the, I would say, a best model. They don't have to invest, and then they can tie it up with their business progress. So for example, if I get a customer and I'm getting paid by that customer, then I will have some cost coming out of cloud for whatever I'm doing for that customer. Otherwise there won't be any cost, right? So that model works out very well, where you don't have to waste money just because you have something which is open. So you only pay when it is being utilized. So that model actually helps, but then it really depends upon the use case and what application is being hosted or managed or created for the customer.
Great. And I can see like people here are really excited, and I can see a lot of questions coming in. I'm not sure if we can fill people, but we still have a few minutes. So I'll take next one from Anil. How a PMP tailor his or her CV to target cloud jobs without certification? Okay.
In my advice, I would say do at least a basic certification. You don't need to do architectural certification. So for example, AWS has what they call as AWS, where they actually give you an overview of what different services dimensions are available. And that is where all our salespeople, for example, in Capgemini, we have taken them through that certification. It takes 2 days, and we have a success rate of more than 99 in terms of the certification. People on third day they sit into the exam, and then they clear it. So it will give you all dimension from a business point of view. So it's not a technical thing. You don't have to learn coding or architecture on the cloud, but it will give you a basic overview of what different services, what is, for example, DB Pass, what is Pass, IaaS, or something else, and then what services are available, what security services are available, what compute services are available, what storage services are available. So you need to know all those things so that then you can start stitching your program around some of these elements.
Awesome. The next one is from Deepan Datta, and you probably answered it already or some of it. After cloud migration, data security responsibility lies with whom?
Depends upon the contract, but if you are running and operating it, you as in your organization, if you work for Capgemini, if Capgemini is responsible for run operations, then security usually lies with us. Of course, it's again a shared responsibility, and as you would have learned in PMI, if you're using subcontractor, try to do back-to-back contract, try to have the same SLAs coming out of those subcontractors, have same responsibility, same insurance coming out of those subcontractor. So that's general. But if you are running and operating, it would be your responsibility. If you are kind of build, operating and transferring, then usually you will transfer it to, for example, the customer, and then they would be responsible for it. So it will really depend upon the constraint and the contract you are working with.
Great. I think this question is not clear from Colonel Chaudhary. A history of cloud-based data breach of customers or clients, example, health, medical, financial. So really, we have any documented histories? What
We have, and it is 100% of the time these breaches were user errors. For example, one of the large capital market firm, actually credit market firm in US, they had what we call as S3 bucket. So it's like it's like your Box or your OneDrive or your Google Drive, and they had an open bucket in the drive which anybody can see. Right now, of course, cloud facilitate that you are able to do something like this. Usually in on-prem environment, you are not able to do it, but this is completely a user error. I'll share another example. One insurance firm I was working with doing a security review, I found out they were deploying, for example, Tomcat server. I assume most of you know you have these Java servers, right? Tomcat and Apache. They had a Tomcat server with default administrative username and password enabled on it. So they didn't harden, what we call as hardening of your services. Somebody from outside logged in and start deploying their own applications on them. So people are watching, they are trying to find vulnerabilities. But in my last 6-7 years of working on the security side of the cloud, I didn't find anything which was because of the cloud. It was all because people were not aware of how to use this. It's like driving a car. You have to be careful about how you're driving it, follow the signals, follow the road signs, be a nice driver. So you need to be a nice driver. It's a powerful machine. You can kill somebody with it, right? So same thing is with cloud. So I would say be careful, have the right technical and procedural knowledge around how that is being handled, and have from a project management point of view, have the checkpoints. And that's where this knowledge becomes important, because in traditional program, you will not worry about it, but now you need to worry about it. You need to have that checkpoint, you need to have that audit, and you have to make sure that that is taken care of. So that becomes, as a program managers, it becomes our responsibility that our customer don't go through these kind of issues.
Great. I think we've reached our timeline, and I can still see there are still a lot of unanswered questions. I'll take the last one, and I don't see name there. What are typical strategies for fallback or DRVC?
So fallback or DR, for example. So one, of course, is important factor of DR is that whatever your disaster region is, and again, this is more technical question, but I will still answer it, that how geographically separate it is, right? And to give you an example, for example, let's say you're doing AWS, you have London region and you have an Ireland region, right? I won't call it a very good DR strategy if you're deploying it in London and Ireland. They're hardly geographically distant. If unfortunate event happens, earthquake or something else, then both of them will be impacted. So Frankfurt might be better if you can do it across the Atlantic in New York, but many of the EU regulation might not allow you that. But if you can do it, it is even better that how geographically separate they are. Then other important happens is what are your RPO and RTOs? What is your recovery point objective? What is the data sync delay you can actually deal with? And your recovery time objective on how much time you are okay to take to bring your new environment up if there is a disaster happening. So these three things, if you take care of it, one, your DR region is sufficiently geographically apart, and then how much of the data you are syncing, because everything has a cost. The more current data you are syncing, there is a more cost. So what, for example, if it is about weather news, you might be having some delays. If it is banking data, you need it to be very much accurate, or you might need a mechanism to kind of work it out, right? So if the transaction log is there, you can always generate the final balance out of it. So we use different techniques. We call it pilot light, we call it active, we call it active passive. So multiple architectural constructs are there. But from project management side of it, I think the most important thing is they need to be separate, distant, and then what kind of RPO and RTO you are dealing with. All right.
Great. And Ramandeep, thank you so much. I think we had such an awesome audience, and there are still questions coming in. People will not be able to take these questions in this session as we have run out of time. I would like to thank all of you, and would like to thank Ramandeep for taking out time and sharing these valuable thoughts, insights, and experiences with us. This was truly a great presentation, and we can definitely see a lot of claps and likes and everything showing up. So this is truly great. Thank you, Ramandeep, and thanks the audiences and all the attendees. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Raman. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the opportunity.